सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.
Bare Knuckle Bhakti presents The Gift of Desperation, a Bhakti recovery podcast. This is a 12-step based Bhakti-oriented space. Here we share our experience, strength, and hope in the spirit of recovery from addictions and associated behaviors. Welcome. Hello. Hey, Rob. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Jiva?
I'm good. Thanks for coming. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, and thanks for showing up.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Great. So I got Rob on the show because Rob is an OG BRG. He was like, Rob, were you there from the very, very beginning? You were, right? From the really, no? Seems
No,
like
I think I came in a few months after it started.
yeah, but you're still OG.
Pretty
A
close
few
to
months.
the beginning.
Yeah, that's OG. That's OG enough. You were there and you've been here, and that's the key, Rob is one of the ones who, one of the Bhakti recovery group members who really came at the very beginning and just stuck around and helped with a lot of stuff. He does a lot of service here. He chairs meetings. He's helped with literature. He's helped with a lot of things, and he's been really, really an important cornerstone in the Bhakti recovery group. And, he faces a lot of challenges and in life. And, he's a real, a very, he really wants, Bhakti in his life, and he really, wants recovery, and he does what he has to do to get those things, regardless of like what is in the way. So, I love hearing all kinds of people with all kinds of experiences in Bhakti and in the 12 steps and in recovery. So, let's have a talk, Rob. So, so, well, first of all, what drew you to Bhakti and recovery, both?
So Bhakti came first.
Yeah, that's why I asked first. I know that. Yeah.
Like 6 to 8 months, something like that. But I had my life had changed pretty radically. I had a son, first kid, only kid right now. And so like almost subconsciously something was telling me, is like, there's got to be something more to life than what I'm doing, which was basically just drinking and drugging and just floating through life, not really going anywhere. Been in a relationship for several years. And thinking on that, it was like, there's got to be something that I pass on to my son. Like I don't necessarily want him to live the same life that I'm living. So there's got to be something more. And I hadn't been listening to spiritual podcasts or anything like that, but it popped up on Spotify, The Wisdom of the Sages, which is a Bhakti-oriented podcast that really addresses the modern application of Bhakti, loving devotional service to God. And so that popped up. I listened to the first episode, was like, oh, this actually makes a lot of sense. And then kept listening from there and just started binge listening. I could listen while I was at work. So I'd listen
like a
to,
good addict, we binge listen, binge everything.
Yeah. It was the best binge of my life for sure.
Great.
And was listening to 6 to 8 hours a day of this podcast. And it started shifting my perspective on life and my thought processes. And
wow. Did you hear that, Raghu? Did you hear that, Kastuba? You've changed his life. Well, they're not even listening anyway, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, maybe someday they will. But they radically changed my life. I was not going down a good road, basically a dead end road. And I just was circling around the end of it. And this.
So were you feeling things like were you feeling like at that point, like a little bit desperate? Were you feeling like things were really low? Were you depressed? How did that like rear its ugly head at you? Like these decisions. I mean, logically we can say, yeah, okay, my life isn't going great. I don't have a great job, or I don't have this. But how was that for you? Like, were you depressed? Is that what happened, or not really?
No. Well, actually, yeah, I suppose there was a bit of depression. I had recently experienced a pretty major PTSD episode due to combat experience, and
Mm,
was struggling with that. And then, like, this massive life change of now I have a child to be responsible for, a family, like an actual family to be responsible for. And, I wasn't really doing anything to step up to that.
okay.
I was doing the bare minimums, but not really thriving by any stretch of the imagination.
It was like Call
And
of
so,
Duty.
yeah, I did what I had to do, but I didn't do much more than that. It was a struggle, that much radical change in my life. And then like 6 months after I'd started listening to the podcast, best friend had died from alcoholism. And so that was the catalyst that really got me to start thinking, like, okay, I got to stop doing this, because I'm going down the exact same road that he's going down. And he left behind 5 kids and a wife, and I
Wow.
didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that to my own son
So Rob,
or my partner.
I'm sorry, I'm not interrupting, but I wanted to bring up a point. I had just done, I do these things called shorties, which are like 15, 20-minute talks. Like I'm talking to myself in the microphone. They're little bits in between these, in between these interviews. And I was speaking about the nectar of instruction and the very first verse of nectar of instruction. And, and, the first verse says, a sober person, I can't do it verbatim, but in one of these parts was like, it said, there are like two types. There's the criminal who, it's like this. There's the criminal who, there's the intelligent type and the unintelligent type. I am of the unintelligent type. And when we're talking about this, you were of the intelligent type, because you saw it happening to someone else and knew, okay, if this is my future and I keep going like this is what's inevitably going to happen to me. And the unintelligent type, like myself, have to have those things really happen in order for me to really surrender. And it's interesting because I'm really glad that we can have all kinds of people on the show. And, when they're talking about intelligence, they don't talk about, scholastically intelligent, or they don't talk about anything like that. They're talking about just, the intelligence of common sense, perhaps, or, anyway. So it just reminded me of that. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm of the intelligent type. Maybe not full-blown criminal mindset either, but
Yeah.
so I think I've also heard that there's actually like 3 types. There's the type where you tell them and they know it, they learn it from that. And then there's the type
True.
that it has to happen to them once, they have to have that experience once. They have to learn for themselves. And then there's the type where it like keeps happening over and over and over again, and it's like a really hard lesson to learn.
I'm in that camp, man.
And sometimes I am too.
Yeah.
It all depends on the
Yes,
situation.
on what we're talking about.
It
Yeah,
vacillates.
you're right. You're right.
But yeah, I did realize, like, the direction my life was going, I was on the exact same path, and it was going to happen to me if I didn't change.
Right.
And so Bhakti gave me the foundation that I was able to be an emotional rock for his family, his siblings, his wife, his kids, even his parents were all coming to me and like
Your friend
asking
who
me,
passed.
yeah,
Okay.
asking me about what I thought and things like that. And I was able to, really kind of convey, like, this isn't the end for him. Like, yeah, he made some mistakes, but he was also trying to make some changes in his life at the time. He'd actually been 6 weeks sober before going back out, and then
That's when usually stuff
passing away.
happens. That's what usually happens in relapse. Alcohol as well, and especially opiates. When you go back out there, so many overdoses happen. I mean, every overdose I ever had was on a relapse. Actually, all the overdoses were a relapse. And you drink like you used to drink, 6 weeks later, and you're, obliterated. So yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah. So that spurred me to start thinking differently,
Mm,
but I wasn't able to make the changes that I wanted to see in my life. I tried to quit drinking and I couldn't. I couldn't even go 24 hours. I'd wake up thinking, oh, I'm not going to drink. And then I'd go to bed drunk and wonder how the hell it happened. And
mm,
that went on for months. And then during that time, I was working on a lot of different aspects of myself. I was taking my PTSD recovery very seriously. I
mm,
was starting to use all the tools, and was still frustrated that I wasn't getting the results that I wanted, but it was affecting my life in other ways. I was starting to establish boundaries and a healthy space for myself, and that didn't sit well for my partner. She was not okay
mm.
with that because she couldn't control me, she couldn't manipulate me, she couldn't abuse me the ways that she was able to before because I wasn't allowing it to happen.
Yeah, codependent
And so,
relationships, when we start changing, it can get very, very sticky when people change. Either they go with you or they fight you. Some people accept it. You're lucky if you get a partner like that, but sometimes it can get very ugly. Yeah, I'm sorry
yeah,
about that.
this
Yeah,
got ugly, and she
yeah.
was actively sabotaging my attempts at getting sober. Just telling me I just need to go get drink or go get high, or don't, I don't need to do these things. And it was like, all right, well, you're wrong. I do need to do these things. If not for you, if not for me, at least for my son, because I don't want him to grow up and become an alcoholic and addict like I finally realized I was, because
Do you
I
think
didn't
that?
think I was for so long.
Do you think that threatened her? The prospect of you
Well,
getting
it
sober.
it threatened her ability to have full control in the relationship.
Okay.
I was starting to take my own individual and self independence a lot more seriously, and was enforcing my boundaries, and that wasn't okay with her because she didn't have control anymore. And so, kind of fast forward a little bit, that fell apart. She ended up moving into a fifth wheel and was traveling all over the place, and I never knew when I was seeing my son. And then she finally left, moved 4 hours away, said she wasn't coming back, and I realized, like, I might not ever see my son again. And I was still not sober at the time. So I hit a rock bottom when I realized I wasn't going to see my son anymore. And that's when I reached out to BRG.
Wow.
And the community at BRG is just so amazing. The people there, people that are not there anymore, that, new people that have come, it's just a great community. And of course, there's the stalwarts that have been there from the beginning. Yourself especially. I mean, you really helped me out a lot through that
Oh,
beginning
come on,
time and
Rob.
just talking me through.
Yeah, I
But
loved talking with you because you know what? You were just one of those people who really wanted recovery. You wanted it from the deep down bottom of your soul. You really wanted it, and you really wanted to do better. And I really love that. And I appreciate, and my heart goes out to anyone who really reaches out and wants it. And I would gladly spend all of my time with people who really want it. It's just difficult giving time. I think this now too, as someone who's been around for a little bit now. Giving time to people who don't value it, because there are enough
yeah,
people who really
and
do need it, and you valued it, and I love that. I loved that about you, your sincerity and your absolute sincerity in wanting to be a better person.
well, there's something that I realized going into it is, and this was before I even heard the cliche of, half measures avail us nothing. I
Mm.
realized that if I wasn't going to give 100%, if I wasn't going to completely and totally commit to the program, it wasn't going to do me any good.
Yeah, I remember that
So
actually. You told me that. I remember we had a talk and you
yeah,
had said something in that way where I was like, all right, this dude is serious. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
and that's the key to recovery, I think, is you've got to be at the point where you are willing to commit 100% to take whatever measures necessary to achieve recovery. Because if I didn't do that, then I would just relapse. I would just go right back to where I was before, if not worse.
Mm.
Because like they say, my addiction is in alcoholism is right outside the door doing push-ups.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's just as strong. And so I have to stay, ever vigilant. I have to stay 100% committed. And that's what did it for me, because I didn't necessarily like what I was being told I needed to do to get sober. but I knew it's what I needed to do. And so if I
Right.
wasn't going to do that, then I was just going to be wasting my time. I was going to waste other people's time, and I was just going to end up being more miserable than if I didn't commit and just dive headlong into the program.
And the good thing is
So
that
that
you
was the
also
key.
you went to regular AA meetings as well, which is really important as well, huh? I mean, it was the pandemic, so there weren't really any in-person meetings at the time. So
Yeah, so it was like 6 months after I started going to the BRG that I finally started going to in-person meetings. And yeah, because of COVID, I wasn't able to go to in-person meetings. They were just non-existent. It was all online. So I was like, well, if it's going to be online, then I might as well just go to BRG.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And how did that work for
So
you? You know, going into also, so you're talking about the BRG and everything, and that it is a really great safety net and an amazing community. But also, and not but, and AA is what we're formed on. So it's like that's the real deal, you know, in a way as well. So um, how did that help your program when you went out and went to regular AA meetings?
it helps significantly. I mean, one, it forced me out of this isolation. You know, everybody
Yeah,
was isolating, right? Because
yeah,
it was COVID. But
yeah.
so it was like I had an excuse to just hole up. But the commitment that it takes to go to an in-person meeting, you know, the courage that it takes to be face to face to somebody. You don't have this buffer of a screen or, you know, turning off
Mm,
your camera or just, you know, just muting and listening, you know, and nobody calls on you because, you know, they don't even know if you're there, right? But going to an in-person meeting, like you're face to face. They see you, they hear you, they call on you. It just
is
the
that how they do it in
association.
Oklahoma? They call on you? Really? Do they?
Well, in Utah, yeah.
Not Oklahoma and Utah. Sorry, I'm sorry. I don't know why Oklahoma. Really? Wow, that's
Yeah,
cool.
they'll call on you, especially in the smaller meetings. I mean, but yeah, they call on you like, hey, would you like to share?
Oh,
And you don't
okay.
have
That's
to,
good. Yeah, yeah, of
but
course.
yeah.
That's nice.
Um, but yeah, just you know, having people that I can sit down with, that I can get a handshake, get a hug, that I can talk to after the meeting, you know, one on one. We
Hmm.
can go get coffee afterwards or breakfast or whatever it might be. That there's so much power in the face to face that I wish we could get from BRG, but you know,
So
it's got
do
to grow a
I.
little bit more before we
Yeah,
can do that. But I
we're in
have
it.
found a few other people out here, so
Oh, good.
might be able to get some in person going soon. But
Yeah,
it
come on,
just
Rob.
there's so much power.
Come on, Rob. Come on, Rob. We need an in person. We have one men's meeting already in Florida. That's it. An in person men's meeting in Florida. So why don't you be the number two?
Yeah, we'll see if we can get enough people to get a regular meeting going out here, but hopefully so. I've
So
been able to
so
spread the message to a few people out here and getting them interested. So
oh great. So let me ask you something about so in BRG it's a little different. So we read every day. There's like 20 meetings a week, and we meet once or twice, or even some meetings are 3 times a day, right? Even some days are 3 times a day. Do we have three
I mean, if
meetings a
you
day
start
now?
counting like the Australia and
Yeah, that's
German
what I mean.
meetings,
Yeah,
you know, yeah, then we get
yeah,
three. Yeah, we're gonna
yeah.
have
We got
3 a
like
day.
three in some time, right? So the thing is, the difference between a BRG meeting and AA or NA or SA or CODA or Al-Anon or any of the other meetings is that everybody kind of frequents each other's meetings. That means if you're codependent, you'll go to an AA meeting and listen to the AA literature, and we all kind of, they're all open meetings, which means anyone can come. As far as you don't have to be an alcoholic to be in an AA meeting. We understand in the BRG that the solution's the same. Addiction is addiction is addiction, whether it's to a person, whether it's to a feeling, to a substance. It's addictions to nouns, right? Persons, places, or things. um how did that open the door for you to have a better understanding of what it's like, of your alcoholism? You know, how did like frequenting CODA meetings or frequenting adult children of alcoholic meetings? Because I know you've been to all those meetings. I mean, we're both in those meetings, and we get to really listen to so many different kinds of of 12-step literatures, and not just AA or NA. How did that help you in your recovery
So
or your understanding?
It did. It helped me quite a bit, actually, because it really helped me realize the depth and scope of this disease. You know,
Mm,
alcohol is just the symptom, right? Or
right,
NA, you know, drugs are just the symptom, or
right,
overeaters, you know, food is just the symptom. Like these are all the symptoms. You know, it's all the same solution, it's all the same medicine, right? But these are all just symptoms. So it's like looking at a ball, you know. When I'm in AA, I'm only looking at it head on.
right,
But when I go to ACA, it's like I've turned this ball a little bit and I get a different perspective. And
right.
then, you know, go to NA and I turn it a little bit more and get another different perspective. And so I'm getting a better understanding of the nature of this disease and how it can affect all aspects of my life. You know, not just
Wow.
that I drink or that I drug, but that, you know, I don't have the best eating habits, that my relationships are not the best, that, you know, my emotional sobriety is disturbed by this disease. And so it's kind of like attacking it from all these different angles in
Oh,
order
that's
to get the most comprehensive recovery that I possibly can.
oh
And, you know,
wow.
so because of that, like not only have I been able to get sober from substances, but I've been able to gain a lot of emotional and mental sobriety as well, that have given me an incredible level of balance that I never even knew was possible. And not to say that I'm anyway like recovered or have got a solid grasp on all these things, but it's like when I'm struggling with something, I can kind of spin the ball to the right angle that I need to focus on in order to be able to address the issues that I'm dealing with in that moment.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. I love that. Um, so how has that helped your okay, so let's go. Okay, so we talked about the 12 step stuff now a lot. Let's go into the bhakti stuff. How does this relate to your bhakti? Does this 12 step, how did all the 12 step stuff start affecting your bhakti? Either in a negative or probably most positive way, but how did it change your perspective about bhakti? Were you able to practice that better? Um, and how is your bhakti practice? And yeah, so that question.
Yeah. So, you know, listening to the podcast, like I got all this information, right? But it was all philosophical.
Mm,
But when I got into 12 step, it turned the philosophy into practical application. Now I had to use everything that I'd learned because, you know, 12 step is a very spiritual based program. You know,
right.
not religious or anything like that, but it does require a spiritual practice. And so when I got into bhakti, or when I got into 12 step after listening to all this bhakti information, it was finally like, okay, now I need to put it into action. Now I need
Right.
to start, you know, really doing the chanting. I really need to start doing the reading, the association, the service. And so it was just like a plug and play. Like,
Wow.
okay, I've got all of this information. Now the 12 steps are showing me how to put it into action, how to practice it and how to actually do it. So through bhakti, you know, I was able to develop a spiritual practice that was structured, which is
Mm,
something that I needed. You know, some people they can get away with, you know, just creating their own, you know, higher power and their own regime of meditation and prayer and stuff like that. But for me, I needed structure. You know, maybe that's
mm.
from my military experience, or maybe it's from, you know, the total lack of structure that I had for so long
Yeah.
in my active addiction, you know, that I needed to, well, and actually I didn't even have a lack of structure. I had quite the structure to my addiction, right?
Yeah.
You know, wake up, you know,
Yeah,
whiskey in the
it's
coffee, some cracks of
absolutely.
beer,
Ugh.
you know, twist one up, whatever. Like I had my routines, you know, I had my habits, and I needed to replace those with new habits. And Bhakti had that structure. They had that format. And I mean, it's not hard and fast, but there are certain, you know, rules and regulations that can be applied to life pretty easily. And so I started doing that, and it just fit together so well. You know, it was
Doesn't
definitely
it?
turnkey for me. Yeah.
And I think also a lot of people who go into bhakti, and I think perhaps, I mean, I don't know how sensitive you are about that, but a lot of people are like, oh, rules and regulations, screw that. I don't want rules and regulations and all of that stuff. And in the program, we talk about suggestions, right? But, the suggestions are like, if you're going to jump out of an airplane, please wear a parachute. If you, that's a pretty good suggestion.
Yeah.
But so, it's like the nectar of instruction, right? And all of these guidelines and stuff. So I think the wonderful thing about a 12-step program is that it gives us that time to unfold and to grow into this spiritual practice, and doesn't have that, finger pointing, you got to do this and you have to do that. And there can be pockets in the bhakti scene, maybe in ISKCON or other Gaudiya Vaishnava mats. And there can be the tendency to be dogmatic, and there can be the tendency to have to point the fingers and say, you have to do this. And if you don't do that, and blah, 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 just like in anything. How did that 12-step process and bhakti, did that affect that for you, where you gave yourself a little bit more, like, okay, a little more kindness, a little bit more, unfolding, or just, keeping on a straight road, but not, doing it in a hectic way, like listening to people bossing you around or whatever. So what was your experience in that?
Yeah. So bhakti, it's like an interstate for me, highway. So bhakti is one side of the road, one line on the road. 12-step is the other line on the road. But then there's like 4 lanes on that road, and I can choose what lane I want to be in, or that I need to be in to get where I'm going. Like it's all going the right direction, but those lines on either side, bhakti and 12-step, keep me on the right road. And I can decide to be in the slow lane, or I can be in the fast lane, or I can be in any lane in between, and it's up to me. And it changes, sometimes I'm fast laning it and like really cruising in my program and in my spiritual practice. And then other days I'm in the slow lane and I'm just coasting along, but I'm still on the right road. I'm still going the right direction. And what I have found personally is like the bona fide spiritual masters, they understand that everybody is in a different place in their life, have different life experiences, have different samskaras, and progress at a different rate.
Yes.
Especially when it's like a one-on-one situation, they have the blanket statements, the blanket regulations, rules and regulations, because they got to have that structure to work from.
Sure.
And so if you're very impersonal about it, then it's like you have to do this and this and this and this and this and this every day, every single day. But then when you get on the more personal level with the spiritual masters or something like that, or even just a spiritual guide, they accommodate. And this is something that Srila Prabhupada did as well. In his books, everything is laid out exactly the way it needs to be. But when you read about his interactions with his disciples and the early devotees, is he would adjust to meet them where they were at, in order to help them take that next step. And so it's really got to be a personal program, and it's got to be a personal relationship with your guru or spiritual master, in order to avoid feeling like overwhelmed by all of these rules and prayers and chants and rituals and practices that are involved in bhakti, and because I'll get burned out if I try to jump in and do everything just exactly the way that it's written in the books. I'm not there. I'm too dented. I got a lot of growth to get to
fill those shoes,
those points.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And it's a nice way of looking at it and putting it into that perspective. I really found that most people, okay, so I don't know if you found this, because you've been around for a while in the BRG, and I'm sure people have called you for help. We reach our hand to newcomers. I find there's a lot of newcomers who come in who reach out to me, or perhaps to you. They have all this, they're like, especially devotees, let's say devotees who want to come into a 12-step program, and they're talking about things like, everything, like, I'm having trouble drinking, I'm a sex addict, I don't chant well, I don't do this, I don't do that, blah, 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 and there's like the list that goes on, and all the things, because, the bar is really high. We have the 4 regulative principles, and for an addict who hasn't surrendered, that's a very difficult thing. No meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, and no drugs. And that's basically what an addict does. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And, okay, I never gambled, but, whatever. But that's a difficult task when someone's just trying to get. So this is the thing. Someone had asked me that, and I told, he was like, "Look, well, what do I do? I smoke weed. This is like a pretty senior devotee. You know, I smoke weed. I frequent prostitutes. I drink. I watch pornography. And you know, and then he's like, so how do I stop all of this?" And I'm like, oh my God. So, you know, and that's what you were just touching on. Like, you know, I said, how long have you been trying to stop all of this? And he's like, yeah, 30 years. It's like, you know, the thing is, it's very difficult. And I'm still trying to figure out that formula. The only thing that I can say to most people who come to me with that, and there's not a lot of people, but the people who do come to me, I say, pick the most destructive one that you have, and that's where you start. You know, I'm sure, as far as being a sex addict, I don't really know what that's like. I never was a sex addict. So, but I can only say that, I mean, a lot of men explain to me that being a sex addict is very strongly, you know, with the alcohol. So it's a very intertwined type of thing. But if we don't start somewhere, you know, it's like, I can't tell this guy, okay, stop smoking, stop going this, and just fill yourself with this. He has all that information. He's been trying to do it for 30 years. So when those people reach out to you, what do you tell them? Do you tell them, is this too much of a difficult question for me to ask you at this moment? But would you agree that, you know, picking the one?
So it's difficult, but yeah, I would agree. You know,
Mm-hmm.
pick one, you know, because I kind of made the mistake of trying to like quit everything all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit too much, right? So
Sometimes it's
I
overwhelming.
picked
Yeah.
drinking, and I picked drinking first, and that uh because that was the most destructive one. That was the one that was definitely gonna kill me, right?
Right.
I mean, they're all destructive, but the most destructive, right? So
Right.
drinking was gonna kill me. Um, and then, you know, from there, you know, the drugs, you know, I wasn't into hard drugs anymore, but I was still smoking a lot of pot, you know, psychedelics, things like that. So then that was the next thing that it was like, all right, I gotta, now that I'm not drinking anymore and I've got a little bit of sobriety and I'm feeling like, okay, needs to go. And so
So it
I
was a
stopped
natural
doing that.
process. Was that a natural, like, unfolding process for you, or was it more like, okay, this is planned, and you were already in the program? How did that succession
Well,
work
no,
for
because
you?
initially I stopped everything. You know, I stopped everything.
Right. Oh, okay.
Like even coffee. Like I wasn't even drinking coffee, and it was just, no coffee, no cigarettes, no weed, no alcohol, no any kind of sexual acting out or anything like that. Like nothing. And
Wow.
and it was like I was struggling, you know.
Mm,
But alcohol was the one that was going to kill me, and it was the one that I had sincerely surrendered. And so I
mm,
focused on that for a while. And then as I continued to work my program with sincerity
there
and
you go.
intent, then gradually the other ones, fell away.
Yeah, you see, and this is what I
Um,
mean. Fantastic. I'm glad I asked you this question, because this is what I was going towards. Go ahead. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt.
and so some of the things came back, struggling with tobacco use and will drink coffee every now and then, but I drink it to use it, when I'm low energy and I need to be able
Yeah.
to get work done, like then I use it.
Yeah.
And so I tried, moderation, moderating things and regulating. And that really worked for me. Things gradually became less of an issue. And I think the biggest thing was taking it one day at a time.
And working the
So I'm
steps, right? I mean, you
yeah,
worked them steps and had a sponsor and did all the things, right?
yeah, yeah. Staying in the program, staying active is absolutely critical. I can't just be like, okay, well, I know the steps now, I'll just do them on my own. No, definitely have to have a sponsor, and I have to show up to meetings because it keeps me accountable. It keeps me remembering I'm an alcoholic. I have
Mm,
issues. If I go a couple of days without having a meeting, my disease convinces me like, oh, you're good. You don't have an issue. Don't even think
Right.
about it. Don't think about recovery,
Right.
So it keeps me accountable. I mean, I know in AA, they have like the 90 meetings in 90 days kind of a thing.
Yep.
And I think I did like 120 meetings in 90
Yeah,
days.
I did
And
that
then,
too. In
and then
person
I've been
though,
doing
then.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't do it in person. It was all online. So it was a lot easier.
There
But
was no
then
such
like I
things
kept
as
doing
online
like,
meetings in
yeah,
97. Yeah. But I would have done it that way
but I
too.
kept going.
Great.
I kept going, one, because I realized that it was a service to be there for others, to be able to
Right.
share my experience, strength, and hope. But also it just kept me in it. This was part of that commitment that I made in the beginning, that this is something I have to commit to. And then I found out like this is a lifelong process. It's a lifelong program. So I I was already committed. So I was like, all right, I'm in it for life. I won't ever go more than, we'll say right now, I'll never go more than a week without going to a meeting for the rest of my life, you
Right.
know, because that's what I know I need to stay in this program. And I
It's
mean,
hygiene.
missing a few days,
It's hygiene.
it's yeah, it is. It
It's
is.
hygiene.
I shower every day, right?
That's it.
So
It's like, oh, I've
this
taken
is
shower for the last 35 years. So let me just stop now. I'm clean. No, no, it
right.
doesn't
Yeah,
work like
exactly.
that. It
This
doesn't
is a
work like
dirty
that.
world we live in. This is a
Yes.
dirty world we live in the age of Kali,
Oh my
and we
God,
got to
totally.
be cleaning for sure all the time. So, uh, but the biggest thing is one day at a time.
Mm,
When I wake up and I pray and I nurture my conscious contact with Krishna, I have to acknowledge that I am helpless or I'm powerless, not helpless, I'm powerless,
hmm.
and that I need him to intervene on my behalf
Right.
because I'm too fallen, I'm too
Mm,
entangled, and I'm
mm,
too diseased to be able to do this on my own. And so
right.
that's how every day starts for me.
How does that look?
And
Do you pray on your knees, or you just pray in front of the altar, or do you just like wake up and open your eyes and think that? How does that work with
yeah,
you?
so I put physical practice with the mental practice, with the spiritual practice. So I do get down on my knees and I pray.
Good.
Because that for me, I have to do that. Some people get away with just, the mental meditation, they might even be able to lay in bed and do it. And it's like, no, if I do that, I'll fall back asleep. But my mind is way too, like ADD, like it'll just go all over the place.
Yeah.
If I don't have like physical things associated with it as well.
Yeah. Every fiber
So
of your being doing that, getting the full
yeah.
experience. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I know that my biggest issue is alcohol. So that's something like, please help me stay sober today. And that's where it all starts for me. And then throughout the day, doing chanting, and I don't always, chant the 16 rounds a day or anything like that. But I like what Ragu says, like start with one. Just start with
Right.
one round a day,
Right.
and you build from there because that's how it works. Is start small. Start with little steps. Don't just jump off of the deep end and be like, oh, I'm going to chant 16 rounds a day. I'm going to have no intoxicants. I'm going to cold turkey quit eating meat. And it's like, it's not sustainable for most people. Some people can do it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's impossible,
No,
but
it's not.
especially
But
for me as an alcoholic and addict,
mm-hmm,
like I
mm-hmm,
need to I need to ease my way into it if I'm going to make it sustainable. Because it'll be
absolutely.
like everything else where I overindulge and I go overboard and I go extreme with it and then I
And
get
then you're
burned
like,
out.
yeah, and then you're like, fuck this. I don't want, excuse my language. I don't want to do this. And
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, of
Yeah, it's
course.
too hard. It's too hard. I can't keep doing it. So by slowly adding more and more as I go. And then I think something else that's really important to remember is Krishna has provided us with so many resources for mental and emotional health
Oh
on
my
this
God,
planet
yes.
in this age that we shouldn't just turn a nose up and be like, oh, well, it says, in the books that all I need to do is chant and, associate and read, and that's all I need to do. That works great for somebody that doesn't have issues.
Yeah.
you know,
And name me
mental
one
issues,
person who doesn't
emotional
really have
issues.
mental
Right.
issues.
Right. Yeah.
And if
So
you don't,
there's
and if,
practically
if you think
nobody.
you don't, I've freaking taken them from you. I've got like 6 people's mental issues in my one head.
Yeah, mental issues are contagious. You spend enough
Totally.
time around somebody, it's contagious. It's like anything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
what do they say? Association is what defines you. You know, you are the sum and average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Oh my gosh. That's
And
true, isn't it?
like
That's
like in
scary.
my relationship with my ex-partner, like I didn't have codependency before this relationship. Like I was totally solid on my own. I didn't jump from one relationship to the other. I spent
Mm,
most of my adult life single and fine with it. But suddenly I had all these codependent behaviors after being in this relationship with this person for almost 5 years. And it's
right.
like you like I'd never had a panic attack, but she had them all the time. And then suddenly after a couple of years, I suddenly started having panic attacks. Like, what is this? So like I do believe that mental illnesses can be contagious. They're not like, oh, I
Yes.
got exposed to somebody and now you have it. No, like you have to spend a lot of time around it,
Absolutely.
especially
I
if you
agree
don't
with
have a
that.
good mental practice, good spiritual practice, and emotional
Of course.
um
I mean, think about what
stability.
happened. I mean, think about, kids who are around like mentally unstable or emotionally unstable parents, you know, when you have
Yeah.
that, that's like, that's the camp I grew up in. I grew up in camp dysfunctional, like freaking totally like
Yeah. So maybe
nuts.
contagious isn't the right word. Maybe learned.
Yeah, but
These are definitely learned behaviors that you
absolutely.
spend enough time around something. You know, what do
Yes.
they say? If you hang around the barbershop long enough, you're gonna get a haircut, you know?
Haircut. Oh my
Like,
gosh. Yeah, totally.
yeah. So
Absolutely. 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 You know,
so we got to take advantage of these resources to address
yes.
these issues, you know, because I know with my PTSD and the associated symptoms with that, it can make it really difficult for me to maintain a consistency in my spiritual practice if I'm not using the tools that I've gained to address my PTSD. You know,
Which
because
are which
depression will
are
manifest.
Yes, absolutely. And also with your alcoholism, you're talking about the steps, right? So I know because we talk, you're on step 4. So the step 1 is
Mhm.
we admit we're powerless over our addiction and associated behaviors, and our lives have become unmanageable. Step 2 is we come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, we give our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand God. And then 4 is that we take a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Now, this is where you're at now. And this means is the mess that we've made, we're cleaning it. We're
Mhm.
cleaning it. So after you've surrendered, after you know that, like what you said, you pray in the morning, you say, Krishna, help me intervene here, right? So we can believe that that's possible. And then we do that. We make that decision in the morning to do that, to really do give that over. And from that mood because that's a mood of surrender, right? All those 3 steps, those
Yeah.
first 3 steps, you've surrendered, you're giving it, you're surrendering. We go in and we take a fearless and searching moral inventory of ourselves. Now, this is the showers you were talking about. And this is taking inventory. And like they say in the big book, that we go and we take stock of what we have. All the skeletons in our closet, all the stuff that we have. You look at it like if you're stocking, if you're like, what do you call the people who stock for Armageddon? What are they called again?
Oh,
Preppers. Preppers. So if you go
preference.
down,
Yeah.
yeah. So if you go down to a prepper's basement, they're going to a good prepper. They're going to have the stuff that's easily expired in the front, and the old, the longer it's held, the cans will go back in date order. And what you need
Mhm.
to do is keep stock of what you have down there. Eat what what's going to go bad. Fill them up, and it's like that. It's the same thing with the 4 steps. You're going downstairs. You're into that. You're going through the things that you've kept on to your relation, your resentments and everything else, and you're going through all that stuff. That you're actually cleaning your brain and purifying it through naming it and
Mhm.
owning it. So I think for, you know, right now, when you were talking about this, you know, this hygiene and all of this stuff, this is like a big part in the tools that you're using. And this is a great tool, you know, and then you're going to do your fifth step with your sponsor, right? And
Yeah, I mean, I guess I am working my fifth step now, but you know, still working it. So yeah, the fourth step is so key. You know, we take a shower, right? But if we don't ever clean the shower,
yeah.
you know, then it's like, okay, I took a shower, but there's still grime all over.
Oh, my OCD
And
gets really
so,
grossed out with that. I hate dirty showers.
yeah.
Sorry
And
about
so
that.
it's important to do that deep clean, right? And that's what the
Yeah.
fourth step is. Well, fourth and fifth step is doing that deep clean, like recognizing where all this crap is, all this gunk, and then taking the steps necessary to remove it.
Right.
You know, and that's yeah, I've been in BRG for like coming up on 3 years now, you know, so you know, pretty soon I'll be hitting 3 years sobriety. And I'm
Woo!
only on my fifth step now, right? Well, somebody in the program in BRG said, I wish you a long and slow recovery. Well, they must have been talking to me because that's what's been going on. But the
Yeah.
benefit to that is
Maturity.
maturity, and like I have to really work for it.
Yeah.
This isn't easy, you know, this doesn't just come easy. It is hard. It's a simple program, but it is hard. And that's
Absolutely.
good because I appreciate it. You know, if it was easy come, it'd be easy go. If it
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
oh,
Yeah.
you know, show up to a meeting, oh, now I'm sober, I stay sober for a few months, no problem, didn't even have any cravings or anything like that. It's like, oh, sure, I can do this anytime. So I might as well go back out and drink because I
Oh
can get
my
sober
gosh.
anytime, you know?
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
because it's taking a long time for me to work through these steps, I am really having to cement these early steps in like solid. You know, that's why my day has
Absolutely.
to start with an admission of powerlessness and a request for Krishna to intervene on my behalf. Because if I don't do that, I don't have the other 12 steps under my belt to keep me up, keep me supported. So it really makes me appreciate what I do have so far because I
Mm.
have to work so hard for it.
Well, I
I
think that
have to
that's
be so
amazing.
vigilant.
I think that's beautiful. I'm so glad that you're here, Rob. And you know, it's been 3 years that we've known each other, even longer actually. I think well, no, it's probably about 3 years, right?
Yeah, about 3 years. Yeah, coming up soon. Seems like longer than that, but you know, I think when you dive in deep with people, you know, it creates this
Yeah.
connection, and
Yeah, it's
most
true.
likely it's spanned lifetimes. It's probably spanned lifetimes.
Oh my gosh, yes. So yeah, so before we wind this up, is there anything you'd like to say encouraging other people, or something about yourself, or something about Krishna consciousness, or something about your recovery, or all of it above?
Yeah. So meet yourself where you're at. Don't project of where you should be.
Mm,
You know, meet yourself where you're at and just take the next step. Because I know for me that if I had been projecting like, oh, I got to get to this point in my bhakti practice or this point in my recovery, like it would have been overwhelming. I would have been like, I can never get there
right,
because my vision is so skewed because of where I'm at that I can't see where I really need to be realistically.
right. Well, that's kind of
But by
part of
take,
being humble, huh? Being humble is accepting exactly where you are.
yeah, yeah. And so by doing just the next right thing, you know, that next step,
Mm-hmm.
I'll
Mm-hmm.
end up where I need to go, right? Without ever even having to really think about it much. All I got to
Right.
do is keep myself in the right direction, you know, and then take that next step. You know, every journey starts with a single step. You know, so just take that next step. Just keep taking that next step. And, sometimes I might trip on a root. I might stumble. I might face plant, but like pick
Face
yourself back
plant.
up. Pick yourself back up. That's where true strength is. It's the ones that fall and get back up that are the strongest.
Yeah.
Because somebody that's just up and walking and never stumbles, never falls, like that's great for them, but they haven't actually developed the strength in the rest of themselves to be able to push themselves back up off of the ground, to get their legs back underneath them and keep walking forward. Like that's where true strength comes from. And yes, this program is hard, but I can say it is absolutely worth it.
Wow.
Like life hasn't gotten any easier, and it won't for anybody. Life doesn't get easier. Life gets harder, and it
just
continues
gets,
to get harder.
but it gets more simple, doesn't it?
If you want it to.
Yeah.
If you put the work in, it will get simple. And by working this program, you get stronger. So when life gets harder, it might seem easier than it did before because because you put the work in.
Yeah.
Like going to the gym, that 20 pounds is always going to be 20 pounds, and the weights only get heavier from there. But if I never pick up that first 20 pounds and lift it, I'm not going to be able to pick up the 25 pounds or the 30 pounds. But the weight's going to keep piling on whether I want it to or not. So by doing the work now, if I keep working out, keep lifting that 20 pounds, if I lift that 20 pounds 1,000 times, when I go to that 25 pounds, it's actually going to feel lighter than that 20 pounds did the first time I lifted it.
Oh my gosh.
It's progress.
True.
Like it's building my spiritual strength, my emotional muscles. And so when things get heavier, things get harder, I'm already ready for it. I can handle it. And thankfully, Krishna knows what I can handle. So he knows when it's time to add more weight, and he will, because that's part of growth.
I'm going to add an extra 20 on this for you, buddy. And you're going to be like, yes, thank you, sir. May I have another?
Right. Yeah. And sometimes, yeah, for sure. When I'm solid in my practice and program, absolutely. It's like, oh, I got this. I got this.
Yeah.
And so that's the importance of living this program every day. So that you can wake up every day and be like, I got this.
Oh, thanks, Rob. That's some very
I might be doing the bench
words.
press. Krishna is my spotter. I might be lifting the weight, but Krishna is my spotter, and he's always got me. He's never going to let me fail on that, as long as I let him.
I like that analogy. Thanks, Rob. So, thanks a lot. Thanks for coming. And I really appreciate you. I appreciate your time. And I hope to have you on again.
Yeah, happy to. And thank you, Jiva, for all the service that you do for, the long hours, the blood, sweat, and tears that you put in. It's not something that most of us even see or understand. So thank you so much for the sacrifice and service.
Thanks so much, Rob. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I do it because it was so freely given to me. That's all. It's all Krishna's mercy. So, I'll see you at a meeting, and you guys have a nice evening. I hope somebody could get something from our talks. That's why we're here. And we'll see you soon. Haribol.
Haribol.
This concludes another episode. Thanks for listening. In order for me to serve this community to the best of my ability, I welcome feedback. Please write your feedback at bhaktirecoverypodcast@gmail.com. That's bhaktirecoverypodcast@gmail.com. Also, please don't forget to follow and give us a 5-star rating. Share this with family and friends. If you'd like to join our Bhakti Recovery community or just find out what we're all about, please visit our website at www.bhaktirecoverygroup.com. That's www.bhaktirecoverygroup.com. There are no dues or fees, and we meet daily. If you or someone you know is struggling with addictions and/or associated behaviors, you will find links in our show notes to various 12-step programs. Nobody seeking recovery need ever be alone again.
सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.